My name is Jesse Braswell. I'm going to be presenting my capstone thesis over exploring nutrition and rest practices of high school athletes. This is for Physical Education 589 for Dr. Angela Robles, and this is fall 2 of 2018. Uh, the currently, I'm a coach, and I always hear coaches talking about how they can get an advantage over the next team, and um, athletes talking about what's advantages that I can gain, and more often than not, they're overlooking things that like nutrition and rest that can really play a huge part in their success. The purpose statement. The purpose of this study was to explore high school athletes' perceptions of the impact of nutritional and rest choices that they have on the individual performance. The central research questions were: what are the athlete's current practices for nutrition and rest choices? What is the athlete's perceived impact of nutritional rest on athletic performance? And what is the athlete's perceived impact of rest on athletic performance? All right, so the first research article that I looked into was out of Germany. Um, it had dealings with triathletes and bicyclists. The purpose of the study was to test whether an athlete's self-chosen nutrition strategy was better than the one chosen by the nutritionist. Um, the participants were all aging from 18 to 22. There were 18 participants that were all trained cyclists and triathletes in Germany. The data was treated statistically using time results between the different nutritional intake participants. The results from the study were shown that the participants that had higher carbohydrate intakes performed significantly better than those who didn't. Those who went to the nutritionist and served, did exactly what they were told, performed better throughout the workload. This research suggests that high carbohydrate intake is sufficient for peak performance, especially in long-term endurance loads. So if you're talking about things such as a triathlon or long distance running, but it could also be perceived in a long football game or a long baseball game, like last year, World Series went into 18 innings. So one would think that nutrition and rest played a huge part into that game. The next research article that I looked up, it was from Norway. The purpose of the study was to examine whether a controlled positive energy balance through nutritional counseling would have better long-term outcomes in managing desirable changes in the body. Up to this was an 8 to 12 week study in a heavy strength training period. There were 21 participants that were considered elite soccer athletes. This was defined as being on a Norwegian national team or in the recruiting squads on their way up, like the 17U, 16U, but within the Norwegian national squad. All participants aged between age 17 and 31. The athletes were asked to record their diet even after being consulted with a nutritionist. So the athletes were gave the opportunity to hear out a nutritionist and take in what they advise, and then they were asked over a 12-week period to write down exactly what they had eaten and taken in their body throughout the week for a 12-week span. During that span, they were undergoing heavy workloads, strength training, along with practice. The analysis was taken using body mass, lean body mass, fat mass, total fat, and training per week, training hours per week. The results showed that 15 of the 21 followed a strict diet given by the nutrition that included high carbohydrate intake along with high protein intake, resulting in significantly more muscle gain than the 6 that didn't. 6 that didn't kind of continued to do what they'd done, consuming significantly less carbohydrates throughout the weeks, and over the span of 12 weeks played a huge part in not gaining as much muscle mass as the 12 that did. The application shows that obviously carbohydrates, protein intake is a huge deal when trying to put on mass and produce muscle. The third article that I researched was out of Australia. The purpose of the study was to find what percentage of participants interviewed knew the importance of nutrition and how they applied the knowledge. There were 19 high school aged athletes, so somewhere in between 15 and 18, who all held a scholarship from an Australian state institute. The procedure was given out through a survey and put into a spreadsheet to define what the athletes knew. The results showed that most of the athletes, precisely 85%, understood the nutrition and understood that it was important. However, they didn't understand how to apply that to their lives on a daily basis by way of what should they be taking in, what shouldn't they be taking in, how much of each should they be taking in. So they really didn't know the proper knowledge of the subject. However, they did know that it was of importance. They did know that nutrition did play a huge factor in their success, but they didn't know how to apply that to what they to their lifestyle. All right, so in the methodology in my current study, the research was conducted after I submitted an institutional review board application and the general consent form, and approved by all faculty at the school. Every head coach at the school at North Florida Christian School, which is a private institute in Tallahassee, Florida, was given the forms to pass out to their teams. This was after, obviously, they had the consent form and all that done. After they passed the ballot, they were given pen and pencil to complete it, and the coaches then took up the forms and returned them to me. After getting all the surveys back, they ended up with 32 participants, 26 males, 6 males, all attending North Florida Christian and participating in a varsity sport. Did use mixed method designs in this survey. The study used both quantitative and qualitative methods to gather data throughout the survey. The survey instrument, called Athlete Nutrition and Rest Practices Survey, consisted of 21 questions in 3 sections. Basically, I started out with a demographic section, and that was a yes or a no, one fill in the blank of age. Moved on to the Likert scale, things such as, would you agree or not agree that you get up to 8 hours of sleep a night? Questions like that. The survey ended with open-ended questions like who plays the biggest part in your nutritional and sleep habits on a daily basis, and questions such as that. The results, the first theme addressed the knowledge and use of proper diet for the high school athletes. The majority knew that nutrition played a huge part, but they didn't know exactly what proper nutrition was. Some would answer, that they had never been informed, or they had heard information but didn't know if it was true information. They didn't know what to consume. A lot of them thought that protein was one of the only things that you should consume. So they really were informed on exactly what proper nutrition was. The minority did not think nutrition had any effect on their athletic performance. This was a small minority. Thinking back, I think it was 14%. Didn't think that nutrition had any major effect on them whatsoever. They thought that they could eat what they wanted, do what they wanted, that anything that they consumed didn't have an effect on them. A lot of them thought, of the 6, I want to say, participants thought that, their parents had misinformed them, told them that, you're young, eat whatever you want, type thing. The second theme to address the athlete's sleep habits, and asked if the athlete thought proper sleep habits factored into athletic performance. The majority knew that sleep did factor into athletic success, but admitted to not getting enough sleep. Um, so so they knew that it was a big deal, but knew that it would play a big role. But things such as studying, gaming, um, not that all played into them not getting enough sleep habits. I mean sleep and creating a bad habit. The minority knew that sleep did factor into athletic success and admitted to getting enough sleep on time. Considered um, enough sleep is considered 8 to 10 hours for a high school athlete. Um, so they knew that it was an important role and did take the time to get to bed early most nights and get enough sleep. The last theme address um, had the biggest impact on their nutrition. Asked who had the biggest impact on their nutrition and rest. The majority said that their legal guardian, most mom and dad, had the biggest impact on both. Um, there's not a big deal with this if the student wasn't an athlete, and in some cases, the student may have a dad who's a nutritionist. In that case, they probably know what's best for the athlete. However, for the most part, parents know what's good for an average um, kid that is that age. Um, so for the most part, they don't know what an athlete really needs. Um, the minority um, admitted that anyone but their coach had an impact on their nutrition and sleep. This is a pretty big deal. For me, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I should be portraying down to my athletes what's important, what's not important. They should be listening to me. We don't have the ability to go out and get a nutritionist and come in. We're not a college, so we don't have that ability. So the next best resource is me as a coach. So the concern here is that anyone but their coach had an impact on their choice of nutrition and sleep. The discussion here, the most important person in most high school athletes' nutrition sleep habits should be their coach. Again, it goes back to what I just said about with it's concerning that they shouldn't be listening to any source. Not everyone has the proper knowledge of what proper nutrition and rest is. They should have most coaches should have the knowledge, and we'll get into that a little bit later. A normal high school aged kid and high school athletes should have different diets along with different sleep habits. In saying this, a normal high school age kid and high school age athlete just has to be a little different. They're not normal as normal. They're not as just the normal kid who's going to school. So their body is going to require a little bit more carbs, a little bit more protein, a little bit more sleep, and they should be informed of that for peak performance. The next discussion is coaches should get proper information on nutrition and sleep habits and then be able to translate that down to their kids. The kids know that it's an important factor. They know that it plays a huge part in their success, but they don't know how to implement that into their lives. So it's huge on the coach to be able to translate that down. I often, in my paper, I talk about how the coach has the kid's ear. If you got the right relationship with your kids, they trust you, they know what you're saying, and you should be saying this and putting this information down to them. Recommendations, implications, and future research. Recommendations is update curriculum on exactly what athletes should be consuming. In all these articles, they talked about protein and carbs, but they never nailed down exactly how much a high school athlete should be consuming, ages 15 through 18. They would say that more carbs is better, more protein is better, but exactly how much more? So understanding that, and they also need to narrow down research into how much rest. 8 to 10 hours seems like a broad scale. So exactly how much do they need? Implications: nutrition and rest is not portrayed as big of a factor as it should be. We're all looking for these ways to get around things and ways to make ourselves better, but this is a simple way to make yourself better. And then high school coaches should start sharing their information with their players. It's a little concerning that anybody but their coaches are passing down information. So these kids are hearing it from any and everybody. It's important for their coaches to nail down what's important, what nutrition they should be consuming, how much rest they should be doing to get their best peak performance. Future research really needs to see how much high school coaches know about nutrition and rest. I believe that if high school coaches understood the importance of nutrition and rest, they want to win. They want the best for their kids. They would be saying this stuff if they knew about it. So future research needs to figure out exactly, you know, how much they really know. And then, like I said earlier, it needs to be figuring out how much, how much nutrition and how much rest these high school athletes should have. The exact amount would be great. So high school coaches could portray that over to their kids. So that's what I have for my capstone, and I hope you guys enjoy it.